So how to prepare for your recovery is a big deal too.
Mm-hmm.
You know about that you're going to go through this traumatic experience, but I don't think people usually hear in depth about things you can have at home to prepare for engorgement, or if you do have some type of stitching or repair, things that you can have at home ready to take care of that.
This is Raising Mama, a hilariously honest podcast dedicated to unveiling the hidden realities of motherhood.
Our goal is to arm you with the information and tools you need to be your most confident and empowered self.
This podcast is packed with unfiltered testimonies, diverse perspectives, and expert opinions, along with a good dose of laughter and tears.
Leading you on this journey is my best friend, Megan Stander, who is a CEO, passionate maternal health advocate, and mom of 2 daughters.
Alongside me is my best friend, Chelsea Ledson, who is a mother, wife, and registered nurse with her master's specializing in women's health. Let's try to raise the next generation
by raising up mamas
and maybe raising a little hell.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, mamas.
Welcome back to Raising Mama. Join us today as we interview Kristen Finnell, a neonatal nurse practitioner, nurse educator, and mom of 3. With experience at top hospitals like NYC Cornell and NYU Langone, I hope I said that right.
Langone.
Kristen is an expert in guiding new parents through the challenges of early parenthood. September is Prematurity Awareness Month, and Kristen is offering a free webinar to help parents prepare their homes for NICU babies. Tune in and learn how to set your home up for success and navigate common challenges in your baby's first year. This episode is a must listen for any parent looking to avoid learning the hard way. Thank you, Kristen. We are so pumped. It is amazing when we always have great experts, especially ones that already know all the answers. We are excited to get chatting. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for accepting me and letting me come on and chat with you.
Hey, did I say that one hospital name right?
Langone? You did, yes.
Hey!
NYU Langone. Yep, you got
There you go. They're so prestigious, I can't even say it correctly. It's like Louis Vuitton or something.
It's so funny that you said thank you for accepting me, because we're like, I don't know. We're not that cool yet. So we're like, yeah.
Well, I feel accepted into this mom group that you have going on. Yeah. I love your wanting to include new moms and make people comfortable. So
love it. Well, talking about being comfortable, I know that you talk to new moms all the time. What do you think causes the most anxiety when you're talking to your patients? What's like the most common concern that they talk to you about? I'm just so curious, like what are parents most stressed about?
I think before they have the baby, they're so worried about labor that that's all they can focus on, right? Because it's this experience that you hear all these scary things about, and that's all that most pregnant women focus on is what is that going to be like? How am I going to get through it? What's my plan for that? And then they skip over preparing for postpartum appropriately because they're like, oh, it's a baby. I'll figure that out. But I think that education piece is what most people are missing. And then if they do go and get education, a lot of what's offered is very minimal. Like you can go to the hospital and have a tour of the delivery space and they teach you how to do a swaddle or change a diaper, but nothing is talking in depth about your experience postpartum. What is that going to be like? What's that going to feel like? What are the emotions that come with it? And then more than sleep and feeding, there's so much that goes into caring for this tiny, helpless little human that people just want to focus on sleep because they know they're going to be sleep deprived and they know that feeding is going to be a challenge, and they just kind of scratch the surface on that but don't go any deeper. So
yeah, and we've talked quite a bit about sleep and quite a bit about feeding, but we haven't really covered some of these other aspects of taking care of a newborn. And like I distinctly remember, just as you were talking, I was thinking about how when I brought my first baby home and I just had this like huge realization that I'm like, oh my God, I have to keep this thing alive. And not just like knowing the new responsibility, but being scared out of my mind that like how horrible it would be if something happened, to the baby. So,
Absolutely. And I relate to that on another level because I was a nurse practitioner when I had my first baby. So
mhm.
I didn't prepare thinking like, this is what I do for my career day in and day out. But that's so specific too, because I come from the NICU world. So I
Mhm.
was thinking everything that could possibly go wrong was going to
Mm-hmm.
go wrong. So I
Mm-hmm.
had
Right.
like this totally different perspective where my anxiety was even higher and I was
Mm.
not prepared for taking care of a baby at home appropriately. Of course I have that leg up, but
So how is it different? Like taking care of NICU babies versus taking care of your own baby at home?
well, first, thank the Lord, my baby was healthy, but I
Mm.
thought like every little thing was something bigger. Right.
Mm.
Mm.
So, something I especially learned was with breastfeeding, your milk doesn't come in for several days after delivery, which you probably know now, right? But
Yeah.
for me, I didn't realize that their stomach is only 5 mLs, which is like one tiny syringe in the first 48 hours before they're eating, too. So, I let my daughter go to the nursery to get some sleep. And I was like, if she's not feeding enough, give her formula. And I regret that. And I know like formula is okay. There's nothing wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
But I knew that I wanted to breastfeed. And I kind of gave that up in that first window of exhaustion and
Mhm.
thinking that she needed more because I wasn't educated enough. And that's just one aspect, right? And for me, I was so upset about it and made such a big deal mentally that she had a little bit of formula, which is in hindsight, not a big deal at all, right?
No.
But
Right.
these are the things that looking back, I have so many little stories like that that I realized were not a big deal at all. And that if I would have done a little bit more research or prepared for actually caring for a baby at home and how it's different than caring for sick babies in the hospital, it would have
Mm-hmm.
helped me. And that's why I want to create content and help people because hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah.
Totally. So, Kristen, what I was hearing you say is majority of parents, when they're coming to you, it's all about birth. If they are going to ask anything about postpartum, it's maybe sleep, it's maybe feeding. But if you were a new parent or somebody who's newly pregnant and you're going to go to your healthcare provider, what two questions should they actually ask? Like, what should people be asking that they're not asking?
So, number one for me, and this is a newer topic, I don't think it was actually as big even when I had my daughter almost 7 years ago, but how to prepare your home appropriately. So, we know
Mm.
there's so much research now about toxins and things in our food and our products. And I know that they're expensive, but there are options that are available just to make a better choice, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
like, detergents, everything that's sitting on your baby's skin is seeping into the skin, especially in that newborn period. The lotions you use, the soaps you use, all of that stuff, preparing for that period better. And also, like, there's a lot of research with SIDS now and the air quality in the home. And it doesn't have to be some expensive filtration system. You can get those little ones that you plug in to the corner of the baby's room.
Mm-hmm.
Being mindful if you live in a city, not opening the windows all the time, even when it's nice and breezy outside, like limiting that air pollution that's coming in. And that's going to help
Hmm.
you prevent things like SIDS, which
Mm.
is a really big deal in that time frame. So I talk a
And real
lot with
quick,
my
what
clients.
is SIDS for
So
those who might not know?
SIDS, yes. So sudden infant death syndrome, which is very scary. And we don't exactly know what happens, but it's thought that the baby suffocates in some capacity while they're sleeping. So it usually happens during sleep. in an unsafe sleep environment for a number of potential reasons. So we have a lot of things we do now to prevent that.
Got it. So they should be asking how to prep their home, especially things they can do to prevent SIDS and everything else. And then maybe what's like one other hot question they should ask?
So how to prepare for your recovery is a big deal too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, you know about that you're going to go through this traumatic experience, but I don't think people usually hear in depth about things you can have at home to prepare for engorgement, or if you do have some type of stitching or repair, things that you can have at home ready to take care of that. Ways to prevent infection, things to look out for. So I actually recently know 2 friends who had postpartum preeclampsia, which is very uncommon, but you can be really scary, right? So you want to know the signs and symptoms to look out for that. So of course you're focused on your new baby, but you can't take care of the baby if you're not taking care of you too. So focusing on things like that is important.
So this is something that I struggle with, or we've struggled with a lot, and I think that we've talked about it with previous guests before, because a lot of people, like you and me and Chelsea and many of the other guests that have come on, one of the reasons like why we're doing the work that we do is because we've experienced something, during postpartum or during birth, and we felt like as you said, there's something that we could have done to prepare ourselves better that could have taken some of that strain off of us, best case scenario, and could have maybe even drastically improved the situation. But it's tough, right? Because like we don't want to scare moms. Like it's not guaranteed. And even if there's like a high likelihood that postpartum is going to be pretty rough, there's so much good that comes with it, right? That like, you really don't want to freak people out, but then you also don't want to leave them in the dark. So it's like, what is the best way to do that? And then on top of that, how do you interest, expecting mothers in this stuff? Because there is like, it makes sense that there's a focus on labor, but labor is so short, really, in the grand scheme of things. Like even if it's like 3 days, or something ridiculous, like it's so short, and postpartum is like so long. So I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are on like how to access the brain and actually,
Get people excited to want to know the
people,
info.
yeah, or
Not
at least like
scared,
intrigued,
more empowered.
without freaking them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's the same with labor. People freak out about that, and that's why they focus on it. But if they are aware, then they will seek out like an expert or someone who's been through it personally and professionally, right? So it's really just getting the information out there, because it's also different if you're talking to, your friend or your sister or your neighbor who's had an experience. Everybody's experience is going to be unique, and what they're going to feel or go through is going to be unique. But you have to generalize it, and that's where the professional part of it comes in, right? These are the things you could experience, and this is black and white how you will care for that. These are the things you should look for if you have headaches, if you're dizzy, like going through signs and symptoms and things to recognize is a professional piece of it, that there needs to be more educators out there who are giving this information freely. That's
sort of
my
like
opinion.
the bundled package, like, oh, you're going to have birth here, at this location. Well, great. Step 1, here's how you do, birth education. Step 2, this is how you do, feeding education. Step 3, how to prep your, like if it was all inclusive. But I feel like, especially in the traditional American hospital setting, it's like, cool, it's out. Good luck,
Right.
like.
Why is that? Like you guys are both nurses. Why do you think that is?
America, for some reason, does not focus on preventative things, or like we're not very good at saying, we're like, okay, be healthy. But what does that mean? Right? Or, okay, have a baby, but what goes into that. We just care for it when you're in the hospital. It's like, maybe because it's so dang expensive to be in the hospital that we're trying to get you in and out. We don't have that time of like spending the quality time, even with the newborn education. For, I mean, you know, for discharge instructions, how long do you get to give your patient discharge instructions? Sometimes these people are on brand new medications. How long can you actually talk to them about it?
In 3.5 minutes. That's our goal.
Exactly. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah,
It's,
from the
it's
time I
crazy.
hit discharge, like in the computer system, I need to get them out of the facility within 15 minutes. And so 3.5 minutes for education, or 3.5 minutes to take the IV out and get them ready, to call transport, to do education, and then to actually physically roll them down. Or else,
I remembered always being like antsy as fuck to get out of the hospital, like both times. I was like, got me out of here. And it was like there was a lot of waiting, but there wasn't a lot of substance, which is why I wanted to get out, because I just wanted to get comfy in my own house and everything.
yeah.
But like,
Which
why
makes,
is that? Why do you wait so long, but you don't like I simultaneously felt like I was there for longer than I needed to be, but I also didn't get the information that I needed.
Yeah,
it's always interesting to me to hear,
Mhm.
the patient perspective,
Uh-huh.
right? Because your nurse is probably running around like a chicken without a head, doing a million things, and for
I
you,
know.
just sitting waiting. So it's just interesting to hear the patient perspective.
It's a labor issue then. It's like there's just not enough bodies, so you just have to.
There's like 25 people that need to be signed off to coordinate to get you out of the hospital. So
Yeah.
getting all those people on the same page and everything in the right rhythm just takes a minute. But the question, Megan, of like why, and what you were saying, Kristen, of like why don't we focus on primary care? I think it's two major things. One is everything that goes into a hospital that goes through insurance has to go through a diagnostic code. So it has to fit in a very small black and white parameter of like what you're getting, how much it costs. So things that are far more like, how do you feel? How do you, get ready for your baby? These things are really hard to put in a diagnostic code and to like bill for. I think that's number one. Everything's about money, everything's about insurance. And then the second thing is, in a company whose job is to make money, you're going to make the most amount of money. It's called tertiary intervention. So primary intervention is like, you're not even sick, right? So you're just like, oh, hey, if you don't want diabetes, try to eat a balanced diet with fiber and, watch your carb count. That's education, costs nothing. We don't do that. Secondary is like, ooh, okay, you're kind of like a little bit diabetic. And so we're going to give you some insulin, stuff like that. So you're sick, but the intervention's not that expensive. Like insulin is not that expensive. And then tertiary interventions like, well, since you didn't have a primary doctor, you never got your diabetes checked. Now you just lost your eyesight or you lost a foot because your diabetes has made it so that you can't, feel your feet and you got an infection or whatever, and they're going to cut your foot off. The cost to fix somebody's foot and cut it off is way higher than education. So in the American model, it's like what makes the companies the most money are emergencies, are these big interventions, are OR rooms, doctors, ER, anesthesia, blah, blah, blah. That's what makes the most amount of money as a company. But what actually brings the most amount of public health, boop, is just education right at the top, really simple things, or creating like public parks that have, vegetables available, food deserts, those kind of things. But that's usually not what people focus on because it's not what makes the company the most amount of money. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. No,
Okay, but to get back on track, I know you have a whole free webinar, but
Yeah, enter like, okay, so what do we do then?
Yeah.
That's
So
what you're here for.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
You can listen to all your free education and skip past, so you're not in like the last category. Like, you know what I mean? If you're going to the hospital, it means you're probably in the last category where things really got bad and you want to not go to the really bad. What do you tell? Like, just, I know you have a whole lot of things, but since you were saying your 2 questions were how to prep for your home, how to take care of yourself, what are some things like you would say in your web seminar of like how to prep for your home specifically, not all of them, and how to prep for yourself specifically?
Sure. So specifically, start to look up different options for the products you're using. Absolutely. That's going to be a game changer, especially for newborns. Their skin is so fragile and everything you're putting on and around their skin. So you have to think about what you're washing their clothes, their bedding in, what you are cleaning their bottles with. Everything that you are putting on this baby is going to be accepted differently into an immune system that doesn't have reserves and build up to fight against things too. So number one for preparing your home is definitely looking at the products you're purchasing and how you're washing them and things that you're going to be giving your baby directly.
Mm-hmm.
This took a lot of research for me. It's still an ongoing journey, right? And you have to balance the cost of things as well. And there are definitely different scales of options. I love the EWG. I always talk about that. So you can look up specific products. They get a
What's
rating.
EWG?
So EWG is a website. You can go to EWG product search, and they have done all the research for you where they will give you a rating for each product, whatever it is. Type in the product specifically, and it will tell you on a scale of 1 to 10 how toxic it is based on the ingredients that make up that product. So for things that are not directly on the skin, I'm okay with like a 5 or a 6. If you're putting like something directly on your newborn skin, you want to be lower on that scale. And it's a great resource because they do have a lot of products on there that you can just look up. It makes it nice and easy.
Any personal favorite like brands of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So my daughter has really bad eczema. So our laundry detergent is Molly Suds. It's my absolute favorite. It actually washes the clothes and it's completely non-toxic, gentle. Love it.
We are not sponsored by Molly Suds.
I'm not sponsored. That's just my personal experience. And then anything that doesn't have fragrance specifically. So for fragrance, I'm like, if I'm going to make a choice between 2 products, I'm going to go with the one with no fragrance as a big thing. So
what about Dreft? Like, I feel like that was like the boomer advice I got from everyone is like, do you have Dreft? Like, is that, do you really need Dreft / is it okay?
/ what is Dreft?
Dreft is like, it's like the laundry detergent that they, you know, because, and do you really have to wash all the clothing you get before the baby wears them?
Yes, you do. So it's really important because, again, it's sitting on their skin, right? So especially things they're going to be in for long periods of time, like sleepers and things like that. Every single thing that touches your baby's skin, especially within those first 6 months, should be washed before it ever goes near them. And with something at least with no fragrance. So you can, like the Tide makes the all clear fragrance free. That's a better financial option. It's not completely clear, but it's going to be better. Dreft is going to be better.
What's the deal with fragrances? Because I've always like, is it just more irritating or is it actually like more toxic?
It can be irritating if you have sensitive skin, but also it's an endocrine disruptor. So it's going to mess with the hormones in your body. And of course, for new babies, it's going to go directly into their skin. So it's more important for us adults. And then when you're going through like puberty and things like that, where you have these endocrine disruptors, but you just want to start off not introducing things to an immune system that's not compromised, but just not mature yet. Right. So you don't want to put extra stress on their body before they're able to process these things.
Okay. So your webinar is definitely going over like how to get the chemicals out of your house, pros and cons, finances. What other like tidbits can you sprinkle in there for those listening?
So talking about taking care of yourself, something I love to bring up is communication with your spouse, your partner, whoever's going to be in the home with you caring for this baby, because you're going to be going through it physically and emotionally. They're on the outside and they're always going to feel like, what can I do to help? And when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to have those conversations, right? It's really hard to express yourself. You're both going to be tired. You have plenty of time, right, to talk about all this. And we don't, like I didn't with my first baby. You don't know what to expect. So you're not going to get specific, but you're going to say, hey, let's do this education together, right? You should know what I'm physically going to be going through just as much as I'm learning about it. You should know what I'm emotionally going to be going through just as much as I need to know, because they're going to be there to support you. And for them to understand how to help you, they need that education too. And being
That makes sense, because we interviewed a pelvic floor specialist and she said the same thing. She was like, when the husbands came to the appointment, the chances of their wives like following up and doing the pelvic floor therapy was like way high, because
Yeah,
like
because they had like
they
someone
got
else
it.
pushing them. Yeah.
Well, no, not just that, but they got it. Like they were like, oh yeah, like that is an issue that we need to prioritize and work on. Like you
Yeah.
personally can know what's going on, but it's a lot easier if the people around you also get what's going on, what to prioritize, like
Yeah.
what's
Because
happening.
there's a lot of like financial decisions too that come into play. Like if you do need extra help, like maybe you need a therapist, or maybe you need, you know, I don't know, all this stuff. Like taking care of yourself costs money sometimes. It doesn't
Sure.
always have to, but like it can.
And if not money, time. And so
Right.
if your partner can even give you the space and time, that's, and really understand like we're dropping everything so you can do your Kegels, or, it's like,
Yeah.
it's a funny
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
for someone else to understand without telling them. And
Totally.
Lord knows the last thing you want to do is like talk about it when you're in the midst of,
Of course.
postpartum.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay, so communication. We also did an episode about like Gottman communication. Do you know anything about that?
I don't.
Oh, he's cool. He's like a relationship expert, but he has a bunch of like ways to kind of talk about difficult, like step-by-step ways of how to talk about difficult things with your partner. So anyone who's listening, check out our Gottman episode too,
I'm gonna have
because
to check it out too. Yeah.
that it's so
Yeah.
great. Really
That's
like
more that's more on
step by
the defensive, like when the shit actually hits the fan. Whereas um you're talking like before, right? Yeah, like
Before,
when
absolutely.
you're pregnant. Yeah.
Hmm.
What's like a solid list of topics to go through?
So definitely the physical and emotional toll that it's going to take on the woman or
Mhm.
the birthing person, right? And their spouse needs to understand all the physical, emotional stuff they're going to go through. And then even recognizing those scary things. Sometimes it's hard to see or pick up in yourself. So if the other person in the house understands, oh, this is a red flag, this really,
Mhm.
you're crying all day long, you're not showing any connection with the baby, the things that are really red flags, they should know about that too. So they can see that, pick that up. Fevers can come with sepsis, things that can happen after delivery. You should learn about that. The partner should learn about that too. And then again, the time. So something else, when you physically birth a baby, you're going to be restricted, and if you're breastfeeding, your time is going to be limited, but you need to talk about, okay, when is the time that I'm going to get to care for myself though, right?
Mhm.
So when do I get, like, even if it's an hour in the evening, to just take a bath or read or something, you need that time too. So you have to kind of work out a schedule, which is probably going to change a million times once the baby actually comes, but
Mhm.
prioritizing something for yourself, you can talk about that.
I
And
definitely did not talk about that.
no, me
Mhm.
either. The first time, absolutely not. And I feel that my husband and I have a very strong relationship. We still do. But during that time after my first baby, I was like mad at him. Like, you can just
Mhm.
leave the house right now. And I never knew or thought I would feel that way, because I'm like, of course, I want to be with the baby. I want to breastfeed. I want to be here. But like, the fact that everything changed for me, and yeah, you're supportive and you're here, but nothing really physically changed for you, or mentally, emotionally, probably to some degree, but it's just different. And we didn't have those conversations beforehand. And I learned from that experience. And that's why I'm trying to teach other people. If you start to talk about it, then it becomes easier to kind of circle back to that conversation versus have the conversation for the first time when you're dealing with it.
Totally. That makes total sense.
I want to hear about your your Europe experience, because you had one kid in Europe.
Yes. So that is kind of what inspired me to start this, because I did have this really cool experience where I had my first daughter here in the US, and then I moved to London when I was newly pregnant with my second daughter. So she was born in London, and it was totally different in the way they practice. They do have the free healthcare there that comes from the government. But we actually paid for private healthcare because I wasn't sure about the system.
Mm-hmm.
But for basically what you pay here in the US, it was like concierge, like exclusive care
Mm-hmm.
for a comparable cost to here. So I really had an amazing experience there. And some of the biggest takeaways were I had one midwife during the whole labor and delivery process. So she was just assigned to me, and that's it. She didn't have any other patients.
Hmm.
She asked me if she could go to lunch. I was laughing. I'm like, girl, go ahead, like get your lunch, but she was just with me. And they do a lot more. They're very hands off. So they are not checking your cervix as often. They try natural pain management things first. They really encourage you to not get the epidural. And I had like nitrous oxide, the gas and stuff. And I went in a tub and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Still got the epidural. So God bless anyone who doesn't. But
That's fine.
and yeah. So that in itself, but then afterwards, the biggest takeaways afterwards were like I had a pelvic floor, a PT come to my bedside in the hospital to go over Kegels and exercises and how to start healing right away, and how to do things at home to help my healing process, and how to get in touch with them if I was having any difficulty in the healing process. They also had, so the first two pediatric appointments for the baby were done in my apartment. So I didn't even have to get dressed. I was in my pajamas and I had this nurse come to the house, make sure breastfeeding
So
was going
nice.
well, weighed the baby, check the jaundice level, all of that, like in my apartment. And as this was happening, I was like, how can I do this in the US? Like, we need this. It's so, there's so much more red tape here, like to actually form a business like that would be really difficult.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing this virtual thing. But I just really think overall they definitely focus on that education piece that we mentioned before that's missing here. And they make things more convenient. Like there was right in my area. So we were in a city, we were in London. So things are more accessible, walking distance and whatever. But we had like a little clinic that was walking distance that saw everyone in my area.
Aw.
If you had a concern about breastfeeding or weight or something, you didn't have to
Mhm.
wait for an appointment. It was once a week, you could go there, have the baby weighed. They would check how the baby was feeding and overall health. And then you're meeting other women that live near you that just had a baby too. So you have that like support also. Yeah. So I think their support in
Yeah.
general and education is just better.
That sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really nice. And I'm so glad that you had that support, even if it was just the one time. It's like a nice little
Yeah.
thing
Totally.
to add.
Yeah. So far, we've interviewed someone who gave birth in Japan and someone who gave birth in Europe, and both seem significantly better than here. And statistically, America's super low on the infant and maternal comorbidities and mortality rates as well. So it's like it also shows up in the data that we're not doing as good a job as other countries with far less resources. I mean, Japan and Europe obviously have, bigger and robust economies, but even I think we're under places with far less economies. So there's a piece here in America for sure that we're just missing. So I'm just so grateful that you're on the show today so you can kind of fill in some of the pieces. I know that, if someone really wants to get the full enchilada, there are a few ways that they can contact you. What do you got going on right now? Like, what do you hope that if people want more, they can kind of explore? Where should they go?
They can definitely check out my Instagram. So it's From One Mother to Another. And I named it because I want to feel like I'm on your level, right? Like, yes, I'm a professional, I'm a nurse, so I have that piece of it, but also I'm a mother. So From One Mother to Another is my Instagram. And I'm currently working with clients that are pregnant, that you can work one-on-one with me, or I offer group classes as well. So if you want the one-on-one experience, I do it at your convenience, on your time, so that you can ask specific questions, or you can do the group class. And you can find all of that information at my Stan store and my Instagram. And for my NICU background, I'm also offering in September for Neonatal Awareness Month a free webinar for any parents who are currently in the NICU or are anticipating the NICU stay, or maybe just came home from the NICU. This is going to be an educational and support webinar. So I have lots of moms who have been through the NICU experience that are going to be presenting, sharing their experience and some encouragement, as well as education on how you can get the appropriate care when you go home from the NICU too.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. And so if there was one thing out of this whole discussion today that you just hope people could take away, what do you hope the listeners would take away from today?
Education. Go and get education. Do your own research. Take a class. Find out all of the things that you need to know before you get into this situation. And then also, I hope that you take away that no matter how much education or research or opinions you get, it's ultimately going to be up to you to make the best decision for your family and your baby. So it's important that you're learning the options and the information out there, but you also are going to build up your confidence as a parent too, to make your own decisions and what works for you and your family.
Love it.
So
well
excellent.
said. Yeah. So we'll be dropping all of the links to her website, her Instagram in the description, as well as some of the other things that we talked about. And thank you so much for coming on the show. We love talking to you, and we hope to talk to you again.
Thank you. I love being here. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Raising Mama podcast. Your presence means a lot, and we hope you found our discussion insightful.
To become a part of our community, follow us on Instagram at Raising Mama Podcast. Explore resources on the Raising Mama Village located at www.raisingmama.com.
You're never alone on this motherhood journey. We're here to support you every step of the way.